What's good, YouTube? It's your boy, Blue Blood Sports TV, back at y'all with another one. So, undefeated, three division world champion, former junior welterweight undisputed world champion, currently the WBO welterweight world champion, who is widely considered the number one pound for pound boxer in the world, Terence Crawford, was in attendance tonight as undefeated unified WBC IBF welterweight world champion superstar boxer Errol Spence Jr. took on former two division world champion, former junior welterweight unified world champion, and former WBC welterweight world champion superstar boxer Danny Swift Garcia. With that said, Errol Spence Jr. got a unanimous decision victory. As I predicted, 8 rounds to 4. Two of the judges had it 9 rounds to 3. One of the judges had it 8 rounds to 4. But I was pretty much on point when I stated that I believe that Errol Spence will win this fight 8 rounds to 4 in a unanimous decision victory. Um, Obviously, the biggest fight in the sport of boxing is Terence Crawford versus Errol Spence. That's the fight that all the fans want to see. That's the fight the boxing pundits want to see. That's the fight the media and the world wants to see. They want to see Errol Spence versus Terence Bud Crawford. So, with that said, after the fight, Terence Crawford expressed and his reaction and what he thought to the fight as he was ringside, which was out of the norm for Terence Crawford because he just don't attend PBC Premier Boxing Champion fights and these welterweight fights. He's just not in attendance, right? He seems to, just uh, let it be water off a duck's back, right? He don't pay too much close attention to it in person, right? But this fight, he was in there in person. He was as ringside as you could get for the circumstances, right? The way they had it set up, there was 16,000 fans in attendance. Nobody was actually ringside, okay? But Terence Crawford was quote unquote ringside for the fight, and Terence Crawford tweeted out his reaction as as soon as the fight was over. Terence Crawford made his way to the exit. Terence Crawford tweeted out, frowning face emojis and allude to the fact that he was not impressed by the showing of Errol Spence tonight. Errol Spence, in my opinion, dominated Danny Garcia. You never seen Danny Garcia take this much punishment in any fight he was in. Errol Spence was first. Errol Spence was the aggressor. Errol Spence was more accurate. Errol Spence, what could I say? He was dominant in every fashion of the fight. But that said, you could see in between rounds as the fight was going on, they would put the camera on Terence Crawford, and Terence Crawford was giving demonstrations of what he thought should be, adjustments should be made. Like I told everybody, Danny Garcia is a great fighter, but Danny Garcia has limitations. Danny Garcia is not quick-footed, not quick on his feet. He's flat-footed. He has deceptively fast hands, but he doesn't have hands that's just going to jump out at you off your screen, right? He doesn't have Gary Russell, Floyd Mayweather type of hand speed, okay? He has fast hands, but not that fast, okay? He is who he is, right? He's pretty basic fighter, but he's a great basic fighter. What he does great is he has great timing. He's a counter puncher, and he sits down on both his with both his hands, and he has power in both hands. He has a real granted chin. Those are his that's his specialties, right? So I knew in this fight that Errol Spence's athletic ability, Errol Spence's quick twitch fiber muscles, Errol Spence's skill set in the ring to match Danny Garcia's high ring IQ, because they both have a high ring IQ. I knew this fight was going to be a dominant performance, boxing performance on the part of Errol Spence. A lot of people thought that Errol Spence Jr. was going to come back and he was going to stop Danny Garcia, knock out Danny Garcia. I knew that wasn't going to be the case. Danny Garcia has a granite chin. Errol Spence is very precise in his approach. He picks, when he wants to fight on the inside, fight on the outside. He's going to use his advantages, get the W, and get out of there. Errol Spence, we have to keep in mind, was out the ring for 14 months. Errol Spence, after unifying the titles against former two-time welterweight world champion superstar boxer Showtime Sean Porter, who was the WBC champion in their September 28th unification showdown, and Errol Spence beat Sean Porter. And 12 days later, October 10th, he suffered a horrific car accident. Nobody knew what to expect from Errol Spence. People thought that there may be some lingering mental and physical effects from the car accident. It was a horrific car accident. So we didn't know what to expect. So 14 months later, Errol Spence steps in the ring with one of the best welterweights in the world, one of the best fighters in the world, and Danny Garcia. Yes, he has advantages, but guess what? That's what makes Errol Spence great. Terence Crawford, every time he steps in the ring, he has an advantage over his opponents. That's what makes him great. It's just like Floyd Mayweather. Every time he stepped in the ring, he had some advantages at some points in some aspects of his approach in his boxing career. Muhammad Ali, when he stepped in the ring, he had an advantage. Somewhere at some points in the fight, he had advantages, whether it be athletic ability, whether it be hand speed, whether it be ring IQ. He had an advantage, right? That's what makes them great. Every time they step in the ring, they have some sort of advantage in the fight over their opponent. And so Errol Spence obviously had he's physically, athletically more gifted than Danny Garcia. And that's his advantage in the night. He has a longer reach, 72-inch arm reach. Danny Garcia has 68.5-inch arm reach. That does not going to bowl well with Danny Garcia, because he doesn't have, he can't match Errol Spence in the athletic department. And it showed. Danny Garcia stated that, Errol Spence's jab with his arm reach gave him a lot of trouble. So fast forward to Terence Crawford's, not being pleased by the performance of Errol Spence. What do you expect him coming out the ring, coming off a horrific car accident, being out the ring 14 months, and stepping in the ring with a high level, high quality, high profile fighter? Danny Garcia, if he was to fight Terence Crawford, would be the biggest fighter and the highest profile fighter and biggest name on his resume, on Terence Crawford's resume, if he's to fight him. You can't say that for Errol Spence, because Errol Spence beat Sean Porter, who beat Danny Garcia for the vacant WBC title. Okay, so Sean Porter has to be considered a better fighter than Danny Garcia. But if you look at resumes, you take Danny Garcia and place him on Terence Crawford's resume, that would be the biggest fight in his career. So Terence Crawford has 5 straight knockouts at the welterweight division, but the level of competition is not the same as the PBC, Premier Boxing Champions, fighters are fighting. Manny Pacquiao fought Keith Thurman. He didn't knock out Keith Thurman because of the level of opponent. He dropped Keith Thurman, he hurt Keith Thurman, but he didn't knock out Keith Thurman, okay? Sean Porter fought Danny Garcia. He didn't knock out Danny Garcia. Sean Porter fought Keith Thurman. He lost. Keith Thurman didn't knock him out, didn't knock him down, and vice versa. Keith Thurman has fought Danny Garcia. He beat Danny Garcia. He hurt him a few times, but again, he didn't knock Danny Garcia out. He didn't drop Danny Garcia. Errol Spence dropped Sean Porter, but he didn't knock out Sean Porter, and he didn't stop Sean Porter. He dominated Danny Garcia, but he didn't knock him down, and he didn't knock him out, obviously, right? He fought Kell Brook. He stopped Kell Brook in the UK 3.5 years ago when Kell Brook was still a world champion in a hostile environment. Terence Crawford just stopped Kell Brook, but November 14th. But this is a version of Kell Brook that was 3.5 years removed from making a 147-pound weight limit that he stated was the issue with him fighting Errol Spence. Why he came up short is because he can't make that weight limit. So he moved up to 154. He hadn't had a high-profile fight. He suffered 2 back-to-back major injuries to his eye, broken orbital bones, and this is the version of Terence Crawford fought. Yes, he stopped him. I don't take anything away from Terence Crawford, because I always state that I think that Terence Crawford at any point in time in Kell Brook's career would beat Kell Brook, because styles make fights. So with that said, he did definitely fought a different version of Kell Brook than Errol Spence fought, and he fought him in his backyard with no fans. Errol Spence fought him in the UK in Kell Brook's backyard with thousands of fans. So there's a complete difference, okay? So when you're fighting high-level, high-quality opponents, stoppages and knockouts are not going to happen very often, okay? Yes, Terence Crawford is frowning upon Errol Spence's performance, but there's nothing to frown upon, because, in my opinion, he could have won every single round. I knew there was going to be some lapses in the fight with rounds that Danny Garcia would pick up, because Errol Spence would essentially take those rounds off, and that's exactly what happened. You had Sean Porter even state that he gave Danny Garcia 2 back-to-back rounds because Errol Spence just wasn't being aggressive. He just wasn't asserting himself as he was in other points of the fight. So with that said, Errol Spence was asked about Terence Crawford. He says, we got to see what happens. He said he's going to go home, rest. He had a long year and a half after the car accident, and then he stayed in the gym to get himself back to where he is today. So he said he's going to take a break. He's looking to come back in the summertime. I told you guys, 8 division world champion, superstar, iconic boxer who currently holds the WBA welterweight world champion, Manny Pac-Man Pacquiao. He and his team tweeted out that they were keeping a close eye on this fight, possibly looking to face the winner. There is Team Pacquiao in Dallas, possibly to negotiate a fight with Errol Spence Jr. and Manny Pacquiao in a unification bout with 3 belts on the line. WBC, IBF, and WBA belts will be on the line. But I'm expecting Manny Pacquiao in the first part of 2021 to face 4-division world champion Mexican superstar boxer Mikey Garcia, and then later on in the year, late in the summer, you'll see Errol Spence and Manny Pacquiao unify. Manny Pacquiao has been out the ring since July of 2019 when he defeated Keith Thurman for the WBA title. So we're talking well over a year that Manny Pacquiao would have been out the ring. So I'm expecting him to fight not a guy on the level of Errol Spence, not to take anything away from Mikey Garcia, but I'm expecting him to fight Mikey Garcia. That's a more winnable fight stylistically for Manny Pacquiao. And it's a better fight for him to get his feet wet and then prepare for a massive fight against Errol Spence Jr. Terence Crawford needs to be looking at a possible showdown with Showtime Sean Porter, who is his WBO #1 challenger, mandatory challenger, who plans to enforce that mandatory spot and face Terence Crawford. He says he's excited about it. He says he's more motivated to fight Terence Crawford than Errol Spence in a rematch. Now he's the mandatory challenger for Errol Spence as well, but he says he's just as motivated to fight Terence Crawford. He's more motivated to fight Terence Crawford because he's actually stepped in the ring with Danny Garcia and Errol Spence. So he's looking to fight, a new fight, new motivation. So he wants to fight with Terence Crawford. Terence Crawford is looking and banking on trying to secure a showdown with Manny Pacquiao. This is a fight that Terence Crawford has been trying to get since, according to Terence Crawford, 2015. His promoter, legendary promoter, top-ranked CEO, Bob Arum, has been, stating that this is a fight that he wants to secure. But at one point in time, Bob Arum didn't think it was worth it. And he actually stated he blocked the fight. So he's been promising Terence Crawford this fight for quite some time now. And Terence Crawford is looking to secure this fight. So let's see how everything unfolds and plays out. Hopefully we get the fights we want. But that's all I got for y'all. Y'all already know what it is. It's your boy Blue, Blue Blood Sports TV. Hate, like, comment, and subscribe. You haven't subscribed, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, hit the bell icon to get all the new notifications. Follow me on Instagram at Blue Blood Sports TV, all in one word. Y'all already know what it is. Shout out to the entire LDBC. Shout out to New Media. Shout out to Black Media Row. Make sure you like and share these videos. That's all I got for y'all. Peace.